Hi, my name is Joh Wallace. I'm the Extension Weed Specialist here at Penn State, and I'm going to talk a little bit about integrated weed management strategies for mare's tail. So glyphosate-resistant mare's tail is probably our most challenging weed problem in Pennsylvania. So we have a lot of no-till acres in Pennsylvania, and it's really a problem in soybeans and in small grains. So when we think about integrated weed management strategies, really the principles of integrated weed management is to combine multiple different types of control tactics to target sensitive spots in the life cycle of any weed. For mare's tail, it's a really troublesome weed because it's glyphosate resistant, but it also has some unique traits. For one, it's a very prolific seed producer, and it's wind dispersed. It can travel long distances through the wind, and it has a very small seed. And actually, the small seed is the weakness. So because it's a small seed, it primarily germinates right on the soil surface, and that's why it's a problem in conservation tillage systems. And it has very few energy reserves right when it germinates. So it's particularly vulnerable to different control tactics right at emergence, whether it's the use of herbicides or if it emerges into a competitive crop. So when I talk to growers about thinking about how to manage mare's tail, I suggest two different goals. From what we know about its life cycle, the goals really should be to spray fewer weeds and to spray smaller weeds. And when we do that, we're going to see higher levels of control with our herbicides. And we're also going to reduce the selection pressure for development of herbicide resistance with the herbicides that are available and effective on mare's tail right now. So in Pennsylvania, we often see mare's tail going to flower and seed and dispersing in early fall, August or September. And mare's tail is a unique species because it's capable of germinating as soon as environmental conditions are right. So we see fall emerging mare's tail plants, and so this is a scenario here where we're in a corn silage field that's been harvested, and we see mare's tail coming on. And those mare's tail plants that emerge in the fall are going to form a rosette, and they're going to overwinter, and those are the plants that are going to be really challenging to control with burn down herbicides in late spring. We also typically see another flush of mare's tail emerging in late spring. So I think one of the management keys for mare's tail is to start early, and so we really encourage getting after mare's tail control in the fall. And so there's a couple of different scenarios and tactics that can be employed. So in this situation, after corn silage, there may be enough time to come in early or late fall and try to control that first flush of mare's tail with a post-emergent herbicide. Or growers might prioritize trying to establish a cover crop. So some of our research at Penn State has shown that a good weed suppressive cover crop that's established in the fall can actually be really competitive with mare's tail and reduce the population of mare's tail by about 4-fold when it comes to the spring. A monoculture or high seeding rate of cereal rye has been shown to be really weed suppressive for mare's tail, and so we've been looking at different seeding rates of cereal rye and seeding timings in the fall to determine how much weed suppression we can get from cover crops. One of the challenges, of course, for managing this species is the different windows for management. So in fall, after late harvested crops, there's very narrow windows for additional management steps. And so a grower may need to choose a burn down application in the fall or prioritizing getting a cover crop in. And so we're trying to come up with different tactics for starting mare's tail management in the fall. So if a grower seeds a cover crop post-harvest, he does have the option of coming in after the cover crop is established and targeting these fall emerging mare's tail plants with synthetic auxin herbicide like dicamba or 2,4-D. If he doesn't have that window in the fall for a late herbicide application, he could also manage that mare's tail in late spring with those same herbicides. Our other research has also shown that higher seeding rates of cereal rye not only reduce the population of emerged mare's tail at the time of a pre-plant application, but also reduces the number of large individuals within that population. And when we think about the burn down products that we have available to us, whether it's 2,4-D or dicamba or Sharpen in mixtures with glyphosate, we're going to be more effective when we're targeting smaller plants. And so that's where integrating cover crops with your herbicide burn down programs can be really effective for managing mare's tail and starting clean at planting, as well as reducing the selection pressure for resistance. So in Pennsylvania and other regions, we're starting to see more and more mare's tail emerge in crop or after planting, particularly in soybeans. And managing mare's tail is really difficult using post-emergence herbicides in soybeans. We don't have very many good options. What we've been looking at is managing our rye cover crop for higher levels of residue by using planting green practices. And planting green is really just delaying termination of your cover crop to just before planting or just after planting. And by delaying that termination from 10 to 14 days in comparison to typical practices, we can really drive up the amount of biomass that we produce. We also typically, by letting cereal rye go later in its life cycle, increase the C/N ratios, and that results in a larger and more persistent cover crop residue mulch. So one of the questions that we're trying to answer by looking at planting green is if we can manage the rye cover crop for more residue, can the higher levels of residue in combination with residual herbicides provide us with full season control of mare's tail in no-till soybean production? So in this study, we have side-by-side comparisons of planting green practices in comparison to kind of business as normal when it comes to cover crop management by killing the cover crop about 2 weeks prior to planting. So in this plot right here, we seeded 120 pounds of rye in the fall. We roll planted soybeans. These are Extend soybeans. And then one day after, we terminated the cover crop with a burn down application. And by delaying that cover crop termination by about 2 weeks, we were able to drive up the biomass production from about 1 ton of dry matter biomass to 3 tons, so a 3-fold increase. And what you can see is here in the end of September, we still have residue on the surface that's persisted all year long. So in summary, we think that the mare's tail management goal should be to spray fewer weeds and to spray smaller weeds. And our research consistently shows that prioritizing a good weed suppressive cover crop, seeding it in the fall, can reduce the number of individuals that you're spraying on a pre-plant burn down, and it also reduces the size of those individuals. And by doing that, we should be more effective with our auxin type herbicides and our other burn down herbicide programs. And we should be able to reduce the selection pressure for resistance for those effective modes of action. So thinking about ways to establish a cover crop in the fall and then integrating timely herbicide applications either in late fall or early spring should set us up to be successful and start clean at the time of planting.